Welcome back, everyone, to Behind the Shield, episode number 21. I'm your host, Marco Estrella. Thank you for joining us today to talk cybersecurity. On the show today, the US puts a giant bounty on some hackers, Google accidentally deletes an important account, and some high-profile ransomware groups are creating a lot of chaos. Before we get to all that, there's a lot of high-level business going on in the cybersecurity and even IT world out there, in the way of merger and acquisitions, and some would even say consolidation. It started with Cisco buying Splunk, and now just very recently, a couple of days before the show, we learned that Palo Alto bought IBM's QRadar on the cloud, and Hexabeam and LogRhythm are joining forces in the SIEM world. So, gentlemen, before I even introduce you to our regular panelists, what are your thoughts on this? Are we seeing something unique? Are we going to see more? What's your take on this, Jason?
Yeah, I would say that when you start looking at talking with customers in the past, it was about tools rationalization. How can we get down to a consolidated model with what we need to operate for our security program? I think in the industry now, you're starting to see organizations that are looking for the next advancement in their portfolio, and whether that's from an organic or inorganic perspective or standpoint. And you're seeing the inorganic side that, with Cisco acquiring a very big organization like Splunk, they need the technology, but they also need the customer base. Same thing with Palo Alto acquiring IBM's threat domain from a SaaS perspective. They're moving forward in their SaaS initiatives, and they needed that extra intellectual property, the X-Force feed coming in, the Randori, a number of those different solutions in that threat portfolio from a SaaS perspective, as well as the customer base that came with. So we're starting to see that. Same thing with Exabeam and LogRhythm, two giants, one being in the UEBA space, for user behavioral analytics, and one being one of the third largest in the SIEM world. Great dashboards, things like that, coming together to build that conglomeration. And then also, we didn't mention it, but you have Venafi getting acquired by CyberArk. So you're starting to see these different organizations see where there's gaps in their portfolio, bring them together to make bigger organizations and try to dominate their individual verticals.
Patrick, you think we're going to see more of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were just at a conference ahead of RSA conference, a VC and investment bank conference, and the common theme was, well, there was more than one theme, but when you look at it, we're still in a very highly fragmented market, right, in cybersecurity. You have a lot of niche companies that were created over the years, and all those companies, especially the startups from Silicon Valley, they usually have an exit strategy, right? So you either go big and grow very fast, or you exit and you build a technology that gets acquired down the road, and that's going to continue, right? Because the complexity of the cybersecurity market is that you need you need to cover a lot of ground as a vendor to make a dent in the market, and it's very difficult, right? You can't be attacking all sorts of different technologies and approaches all the time. It's very intensive in R&D. So there's much to be said about platform, and that was also what was discussed during that conference. Platform plays, right? You see there's more and more platforms. If you look at Palo Alto's move, it was to fill gaps that CrowdStrike, Cisco and Splunk, and even Microsoft pretty much offer today, right? So, they went and plugged a few holes in their offering. So that's the other play as well. So you're seeing a consolidation of cybersecurity players against, that are converting or going towards a platform. The other aspect, and the other thing that's accelerating the consolidation is the financials. The conference talked about, who is above and below the profit line. And if you look at recently, Laceworks as an example, in the last round of financing, they were valued at $8 billion, which was around last year. Right now, they're having trouble in finding valuations north of 200 million. Why? Because it's a profit situation. Because over the last few years, as you're developing a new solution in technology, you want to gain a lot of market share. So either you have a first mover advantage and gain a lot of market share, and then you have a bunch of followers that may follow you but lose money. You have a scenario where you have a lot of companies above and below the line. So the valuations, because of the high interest rates in the market, have gone down for companies that are not generating profit. So it's inviting profitable cybersecurity companies to buy technology at a discount.
That's right.
Right. So that's another phenomenon you're seeing as well. So there's the financial aspect as well. But ultimately, we need a more mature cybersecurity landscape. We need less players. There'll be more consolidation. And it'll help as well because, if you look at Cisco and Splunk and QRadar and, IBM and Palo Alto, the underlying theme is real-time threat detection and remediation, right? We're still a step behind the hackers, especially with AI. So you're going to see a lot of moves in that direction as well. It's more simplification, acceleration, and more real-time scenarios.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Stay tuned, folks. I'm sure I agree with Jason and Patrick on this one. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. A lot of movement there in the industry. All right, great. So before we get to the show start, remember that if you're new to the podcast and you'd like to catch up on past episodes, you can find them on virtualguardian.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You'll find us out there. Just be sure and type Behind the Shield cybersecurity podcast. So to help me navigate the hot topics, we've just spoken to them, but let me properly introduce them. From Virtual Guardian, the CEO of the company, Patrick Naum.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be back.
And from the Mountain State, West Virginia, our very own customer success manager, Jason Williams.
Country roads take me home.
Hello. You go. All right. So
and airports as well these days.
And airports too.
Yes.
I think we might want to change my name to Terminal. So
Tom Jason has been putting some miles there on his Air Miles card there. Yeah. So I guess you're super platinum traveler right by now, or
not that high, but we're working our way towards it.
Right.
And air.
Okay, so let's get to our hot topics show. We have 4 of them for you today. And we're going to start with Patrick. And you had a hot topic that caught your attention about a $10 million bounty. On some hackers. So fill us in. What's this all about?
Yeah, it's actually when you look at the story at face value, in passing, you're thinking, okay, so they put a bounty on a bunch of hackers, what's up with that? But it's actually, when you think about what's happening, it's a little more than that. My first reaction, to be frank, is $10 million enough, right? There are actually four Iranian hackers that were attacking critical infrastructure, U.S. government installations, as well as the private sector. Did a lot of damage between 2016 and 2021. By taking advantage of more than 200,000 credentials that were stolen. So a lot of identity theft that led to a lot of spear phishing. So they did a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. But when you look at, the amount of money that these guys collect, is 10 million enough, right? Or is it just a dent, And the other thing is that I'm pretty sure, because they haven't caught them yet, these guys are not on, in even if anyone gives information to get their arrests. Well, they're probably not on U.S. soil, right? So that adds another complexity. So, but it is attracting attention. A couple of things I see there. The first one is because the bounty was issued by Rewards for Justice from the State Department. I look at the post here. It says up to $10 million reward and possible relocation. These individuals conducted malicious cyber ops against U.S. firms and government agencies on behalf of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. And this was funny. If you have info on them, contact us. Your tip could be worth millions and a plane ticket to somewhere new. So my first reaction was, what does that mean? To somewhere new. Is it because they're offering the bounty for people in the jurisdiction of where these guys are going, and then they'll bring them back to the US? Or is it a threat? I don't know how to interpret that. So I found that funny. A plane ticket to somewhere new on top of the bounty, or just a vacation. It could be that as well. But it did highlight one aspect. So it's a team of 4 guys that were behind this, and it shows that I think there's a new definition to teamwork, right? When you look at these guys. So one of them was I would say the architect of the spearfishing tools and techniques that they were used. He headed the testing as well, and he was the one developing the malware. There's another guy that was specialized in acquiring credentials. So he was behind the accumulation of the credentials, leveraging those tools. So you have a mastermind engineer. You had the one, I'm not going to say sales rep, but the guy that was acquiring leads and information. And the 2 other guys were actually acquiring infrastructure. So they were making sure that the networks they were used were available, and basically to work on obfuscation following the attack. So they had their own specialties within the team, but they're all targeted in the same way. It also goes to show that, it takes in this case, they were doing spear phishing. So they were deliberate in their attempts. They weren't ransomware as a service guys or just consuming what's out there in the dark web. They were really mounting an operation. What was interesting is that they were able to identify them, report on them, and pretty much detect who they attacked, when, and how. So that was interesting. I mean, that's what we don't see in the article, what's behind the scenes to have led to their identification, and the fact that these guys have a reward or ransom on their head. So that's what was exposed in this article. So again, I mean, is 10 million worth it? What about the geopolitical implications? If they're in other jurisdictions, what does that send in terms of message? And is it enough for a Russian hacker that's making hundreds of millions of dollars to report an Iranian thug, in another country? So I don't know to what extent that'll be useful. We'll see. We'll monitor that. They had put bounties on other people's head. I mean, there was the head of the Black Cat group that had a $10 million bounty on his head, but I don't know. I haven't followed up to see what happened there. So,
yeah.
By Jason's reaction, I think they're still on the run. So
I think they're still on the run too.
Yeah.
The only successful arrests and whatnot, well, we've seen.
In Canada, there's been a few guys
in Canada and couple, US, yes.
EU,
but when these guys are in Eastern Europe, Russia, I don't think we have extradition. So it is.
I mean, the biggest one was Lockbit. Lockbit was got taken care of, recently between the US and the UK in a joint effort. But then they break up and they go to all these other groups. So
or create new ones, absolutely.
Or create new ones.
Lockbit 2, and that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Patrick. Jason, your turn. And you want to talk to us about a ransomware group called Black Basta, and they're creating some chaos out there. So what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of touched back to Patrick's thing. I don't, 10 million. I don't know if I want to be relocated. You could be off the grid. Well, maybe I would be, because if it's off grid and I'm separated from everything, they probably shut down all internet, no network connectivity, be stuck in the middle of nowhere. I don't know. But, for 10 million, who knows?
Interesting. You can buy a lot of stuff.
You can buy a lot of things there. And our other team members not with us. So, Bill Strube rounding out the 4th one. Now it's just 3 of us. So our payouts go a little higher now. That's the Jersey mentality. All right.
That's right.
All right. No, in all seriousness, getting over to the Black Basta. Black Basta has been seen in the wild for almost 2 years now, coming back to April of 22. So they've wreaked a lot of havoc when they first came on board. But they've been one of the biggest adversarial groups targeting critical infrastructure. So they're ranking right now out of the 16 critical sectors of infrastructure in the world. They've gone after 12 of them. They've been able to encrypt and steal the data. But they're a full-blown group for ransomware as a service. They're doing data exfil, so they're doing double and triple extortion on that. Then they're encrypting. But the one thing to note is that they do not drop a ransomware payment at the end. They actually give a note that has a code, and they go to a .onion URL, and then they walk them through to drive them into their Onion side of the house, or Tor side, dark web side, to be able to work with them to get that payment and instruct them what goes on from there. So it's not your typical, hey, you've been encrypted, you have these amount of days to pay. Here's my payment information. They're directing them out of that world into their world so that they can control that at a greater level.
Does your organization qualify to get and keep cyber insurance? Businesses that want a new cyber insurance policy or to renew an existing policy need security controls in place to qualify. Virtual Guardian can assess your eligibility and help you comply cost effectively, improving your security posture and reducing risks to your business. Contact us at 1-800-401-TAC.
In addition to that, as of this April, they've been linked to 28 out of 373 confirmed ransom attacks.
Yeah, busy bees,
12th most active family, and they're increasing 41%. I think 41% year over year, or quarter over quarter. So quarter over quarter. I mean, those are coming from the sales side of our backgrounds. That's some good traction there.
I was going to say they report their quarterly results.
That's
publicly.
right.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Where are they based, Jason? Are they?
They're European based. I mean, they're all over, but they're more out of
Russian origin and Eastern
Russian origin. Working their way back across there. But again, to Patrick's point earlier, you don't know where they are anymore. They're combing through, pulling all these different resources together that they have. Everyone with their unique talents, and then they roll through it. So it's pretty drastic. But when you think about it, someone of this magnitude with this expertise being able to take out 12 of 16 infrastructure sectors, now you look at, for organizations, what we need to be looking at for them in the critical infrastructure world, your power, your water, all of those different sectors that run a country, and what would happen if they were able to take that out.
Yeah.
And so now you got to be working with organizations and really doing your due diligence now around, do we have anything externally facing? Do we have any ports open? They're doing a lot of scanning. A lot of the attacks have come through phishing and exploiting known vulnerabilities. So it's still the 101s of an attack vector, right? Identify the human element, identify any external areas that can be seen and exploited through ports, services that are running an RDP server and a DMZ, things like that, and then working their way in. But again, we got to get more aggressive on being able to mitigate the gaps in our environments so that we can prevent, at a critical infrastructure level, these attacks from being successful.
And a lot of them are, lie dormant, right? And we talked about this, I think, at the last podcast, living off the land, right? Certainly I learned the concept for the first time last time when I researched it. It's the ability to sit there and obfuscate actions behind existing process tools, known vulnerabilities, and hiding there and waiting and lingering until the right moment to move laterally, right? So it's not just about exploiting a specific vulnerability. It's just laying around and taking advantage of what's already there. That is adding more complexity to detecting these guys.
Yeah. Well, in addition, in other reports, you look at it from other organizations, there's indicators coming out of vulnerabilities in their environments. And still, there's certain organizations are seeing half of those organizations, or less than half, actually remediate prior to being exploited. So you're getting your notice ahead of time. You have vulnerability scanners, hopefully. You're doing your pen testing. And are you doing your due diligence and due care to be able to mitigate those risks and gaps before you're going to be on that target list and get exploited? So I think we just got to be more aggressive from our side of the house with instructing our clients on how, what's needed for their security programs, but also from their side, they got to really step that up and really start doing that testing in a bigger advantage now from the adversarial groups, knowing that, hey, most organizations aren't doing it. We've been successful here, 12 out of 16. Chances are pretty good they're going to be successful on their next wave of attacks. They're doing their due diligence and their homework. We need to really do ours and really remediate.
In addition to that, if I mentioned the real-time detection, right? That's the ultimate, the holy grail of cybersecurity defense. Being able to see everything is happening in real time, but then it's how do you remediate? And in the article they were talking about, on average, I was surprised actually. On average, it takes around 102 days to patch systems. The reason is that there's a lot of interdependencies. You got to test. You want to make sure you're not breaking anything. So could you imagine from 0 day to 100 days how much damage could happen? So you need to be ahead of the game, and it's a lot of work. It's still a lot of work to patch and upgrade, and not even that. I mean, it's identifying your assets, so you know what you need to upgrade and update.
That's right.
Right? Often it's not just about doing it. You got to know where you're going to do it. And sometimes we don't have a control or visibility over our assets. And to me, security starts with visibility, right? So
it does.
Patching is always a thorn in the side of our customers. Every time that we talk to them, patching is almost always a headache and a nightmare, even a nightmare for our customers. So,
well, and to Patrick, your point, 102 days for patching, and then 277 days on average that an adversary is in the environment before being detected.
Undetected.
So you look at that spread of time, you're almost over a year between detecting an adversary and patching. You combine those two. That's significant, according to IBM's breach report. So when you think about that volume, that's why you got to be looking at the Taniums and the Big Fixes and these other solutions out there that, based on your surface on your assets, and to your point, getting visibility and having the right asset management program so you know what you have, but then also identifying the surface, making sure services aren't running, and then to be able to patch according to your environment, not according to the Microsoft Patch Tuesday, but really focused on yours. And point, not having 40,000 patches, but 70, test those, and then at least get some of these remediated before they're exposed.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. That was very interesting. We're going to move on now to the next topic. Sorry, that was Jason with Black Basta. We kind of got sidetracked there. So we're going back to Patrick to talk about Google accidentally, deleting a $124 billion fund manager account. So just accidentally deleting that.
Well, they literally wipe them out.
I mean, how does that even happen?
It's interesting because we often talk about cybersecurity, in general, or sometimes more specifically. But to me, it's part. You got to look at digital resilience as well, right? It's digital resilience plus cybersecurity that gives you cyber resilience.
That's right.
Data protection, your backups, your archives, table stakes that we talk about. As a commodity are critical. And this is an example. It's an example. If one thing ransomware attacks have taught us is, your last line of defense is having a good backup. You could restore. It still takes time and complexity, as you'll see in this example. But it's in a case where you're being attacked. We often forget and minimize other occurrences that create problems, as was the case with UniSuper. So it's a $125 billion fund. And it's actually interesting because the CEO of not only UniSuper, but also Mr. Kurian from Google went out to reassure the market and explain and justify what happened. So I don't remember the last time the CEO of a vendor did a joint release with a client that was down and, to explain what happened. So essentially, what's unfortunate for UniSuper is they did everything right. They had redundant locations in different geographies for their Google instances, their critical application. They had proper backups. They did, they had everything to make sure that they restored efficiently. What ended up happening is Google wiped, and to this day, I mean, they now know what happened, and they say they're going to avoid it in the future and put mechanisms, but I don't know specifically how this could have happened. Someone literally deleted the customer's subscription. So it's not a question of deleting an instance where one of the geographies, one of the redundant areas would have taken over. By deleting the subscription, you're essentially deleting the client from all Google instances. Right? That's what happened. So they literally killed their application. They were down for a week. So as an investor, all your account information dated a week. So they were able to restore a week before and obviously rebuild, the fund's performance over time. But they were able to be down for a week because they had good backups. Could you imagine a scenario, which is a scenario of many organizations? This was not a cyber attack. It was not malicious. It was just human error without the proper controls. They were still down a week with redundant geographies for their instances.
And
they had
full
top-of-the-line backups. They were down a week. So think of all the other organizations with which we talk to. When we bring the subject of backup, it's like, oh, we're good to go. It's been running for a long time.
That's right.
Okay, well, when did you last test your backup? When did you do a tabletop exercise that includes restoring from backup? How do you know that your sysadmin has chosen the right data to back up? The critical data. When have you last audited what you're actually backing up? You have a lot of moves, adds, and changes. You're adding cloud instances. This is another example of it's the customer's backup, which was residing on another provider than Google. Another right move that I forgot to mention. They had the actual backup and another provider. That's what got them to restore. It could have been on-prem as well. How many people and organizations think that Microsoft, Google, and AWS have their backs in terms of backup? I could tell you, a lot of them. They have no responsibility. They're responsible for the container.
Correct.
Where you put and stand up your instances. That's it. Not what you put inside. They can't be held responsible for someone deleting an instance or a subscription. Doesn't make any sense. So it's on the organization's side to take responsibility in terms of designing their redundant architecture, the digital resilience layer, to protect themselves. And this is exactly, I mean, if I was a company today, I would see this as the ideal scenario.
That's right.
Because the company did everything by the book, and yet they were down a week. It happened to them. So could you imagine without those mechanisms, what could have happened? And to me, and for our organization, our DNA has always been, and we started our business at the digital resilience layer, backup, archiving, DR plans, business continuity. We've added cybersecurity over 20 years ago. To us, they go hand in hand. As an example, and our strategy was kind of confirmed recently, is you look at Rubrik. Rubrik did an IPO this year. I don't know if you guys know, but Rubrik has always been touted and always presented themselves as a backup company, data protection company.
Right.
Well, before going to IPO, because obviously like AI, cybersecurity is catchy, they renamed their company, they repositioned the company as a cybersecurity company. A backup company has now become a cybersecurity company. They recognize that they're linked, right? So that was interesting. And as we comment on our RSA conference later, I'll also tell you about, what was on the floor, who was on the floor. Well, you had a lot of backup companies on the floor this year that I didn't see last year. So there's something to be said about digital resilience and cybersecurity going hand in hand.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, Patrick. Sometimes I'm talking to customers and I tell them, like what you just said, imagine if you don't have those perfect backups and those mechanisms in place, you might actually go bankrupt. And I have the feeling sometimes that you're using scare language. You're trying to scare the customer into buying, or this is, you're going too far. It's absolutely true that if you don't have those mechanisms, you can be down for months and never recover from it. So
in the cloud, Marco, everything's in the cloud. We're good.
Everything's in the cloud. Everything's
we're
safe,
good,
right? Absolutely.
Yeah,
And you know what? That's a good point, Jason. speaking of that, I think in the next podcast, we don't have to go. We don't have the time to talk about it today. But we're seeing a trend there, and we've spoken to this a trend. People leaving the cloud slowly and going a lot more towards a hybrid.
Hybrid.
Yep. You know, but we'll keep that for future
cost is
time.
the issue there. But I mean, and it's like basic hygiene in cybersecurity. It doesn't take a lot of time, effort, and dollars to manage those issues.
That's right.
Whether it's MFA, identity protection, or it's backup, you have your backup already. You know, you have your technology. Get an audit done. Get an assessment done. You know, get a validation of what data you need to be backing up, what critical data. Make sure your backups are air-gapped. Run your tests. Make sure that you have redundancy between, if you are on the cloud, take another cloud for your backup. Even better, put it on-prem, right? In the hybrid architecture, because data exfiltration, not exfiltration, data egress and ingress cost a lot on the cloud.
That's
so
right.
You're better off, put it locally, your backup copies locally, and you can restore quicker. But these are not, huge complex problems, right? But they're if you plan them correctly, and you work with the right people, you could go a long way to helping improve your posture overall.
Are you struggling with the agility required to keep up with today's security threats? Are you wondering how you can empower teams to be most effective and what obstacles you have to securely remove to do so? Solstice is the trusted advisor you've been looking for. We're a leading security products and services provider that leverages agile methods to support. We build great product teams, combining agile methods with security expertise to offer unique business value for your enterprise. To learn more how we can deliver faster and better value to customers, contact us at info@solstice.ca and check out our website at solstice.ca.
I'm very surprised on that story. That where was it? Like, are you sure you really want to delete this account? Like, where was the checks and balances?
I don't know what.
Hey, you just hit the delete button.
Are you sure? Yeah.
Are you sure?
Unsubscribe.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you and I don't know, Jason, to that point, have you ever tried to delete something from Google or delete a Netflix account or delete any kind of account? They make it really difficult for you to delete.
Oh yeah, you got to go through 3 different areas, 5 different areas.
Exactly.
That's why it was like the best thing when Juniper came out with the commit. Are you want to commit this? Oh yeah, you can commit it or you can save it, think about it, and commit it later. Where other technologies, every time you made a change in the network space, it was active right away. Same thing here. It's like, number one, do you really want to do this? Number two, do you actually have the authority to do this? And then, if you do, here's a code, put that in, and then delete an account of that magnitude. It's just, it baffles my mind on some of those things.
Yeah. Well, I guess it explains why the CEO had to come out, because think about all the other customers that would have been thinking, that means it could happen to me.
That's right.
Right. And it wasn't a cyber attack.
So we're going to move on to our fourth and final hot topic. Jason, you have another cybercrime group, APT 28.
28, the nemesis of number 28 that's been around for a while. So they're wreaking havoc again. They are backed by Russia. They are targeting Ukraine. They're targeting Germany. They're targeting a lot of state entities associated with the Ukrainian backing. And we're seeing that increase, but not only from an APT 28 perspective, but how they're doing it. A flaw in Microsoft Outlook.
Really?
That gave them the ability to do privilege escalation from a bug in Outlook. That gave them the complete authorization and authentication, and then they laterally moved in a relay attack. So Patrick talked about it. You've talked about it. We've talked about it. I mean, we've been talking about the 101s of security on this podcast for a long time, and still, there's still areas in the software, but also outside of that. Okay, you get into Outlook. How are you able to authenticate and do a relay attack to compromise organizations from Outlook? So you think about that and how that's tied in and how people can come around that. It's been very interesting, but they're targeting large organizations now. Again, They were a big entity before. They've been linked to the military unit 26165, which is the Russian Federation's military intelligence agency, GRU. And they're doing working under a lot of broader cybersecurity communities like Blue Delta, Fancy Bear, Forest Blizzard, formerly known as Strontium. So again, you're starting to see these groups really come full focus from that side of the world, targeting specific entities. And they've really been going after the Microsoft side of the house with the exploitation side. Last month, Microsoft attributed the hacking group to the exploitation of Microsoft Windows print spooler. So we got a breach in Outlook. We got a breach on a print spooler. Print spoolers. We haven't dealt with print spoolers since 1999 when I took my A+. So,
or DLLs for that matter.
Right.
But I mean, again, we got to be reminded that these guys do this full time. Our organizations, our clients do not do this full time.
That's right.
They're doing a billion different things, running their business, staying strategic. Yeah, they have teams, but these teams have different things to do. So the proper measures have to be taken put in place to protect against that guy.
That's right.
These guys. And then I'm not even adding AI to the conversation, right?
No, but this is where, to your point, not only fixing these things, but this is where we talk about zero trust as a framework and microsegmentation and making sure that there are 3 lines of defense in a lot of the areas, but also on that segmentation front, your printers, you have them in your own VLAN. There's segmentation there to that extent, but it's
so what you mean, Jason? So what you mean is assume breach, like structure environment assume breach, because build it as if there's a breach that's going to occur.
That's right. Exactly.
One of the principles of zero trust.
That's right. I mean, the malware that breached the Microsoft Windows print spooler is called Goose Egg. So how'd you get compromised, Goose Egg? Goose Egg. But again, it's CVE 2022-38028. So it was dated back to 22 with a CVSS score of 7.8 for a print spooler. So you're looking at this, it's a high score. It's something that we always knew that adversaries could get in through different functions, printers and things like that weren't patched or firmware couldn't be updated. But now you start to think about this. Okay, Microsoft Outlook, to Patrick's point, they do this day in and day out. They're looking for holes in every area to be exploited. So we got Microsoft Office, we got a print spooler. Now we start to pivot. They're targeting the Ukrainians. They're targeting all nation states that are associated with them and backing them. Yeah. But then also, when we start to pivot our mindset to OT and IoT, medical devices, things like that again, you really can't patch, right? I mean, you can't put an agent on there. So you have to use solutions like Medigate that are their niche is identifying vulnerabilities at the protocol level for those devices, things like that. Again, you start to look at those types of entities that can be exploited, and now you tie it to a human element that's connected to those. And we already saw our first couple deaths in the healthcare space. These types of attacks that can get this granular in Outlook or print spooler, now going after that OT and IoT space as a targeted entity, it's going to be interesting.
And guess what? I mean, one of the things we saw also at the RSA conference and the investment bank conference right before is that there's a trend to increase the scope of the CISO. The CISO now has the purview over the OT side of the equation. So you either have CISOs that are from IT and that are inheriting OT, or the opposite. So they're coming together, which makes sense because they're all interrelated, because at the end of the day, there's an IP address somewhere. But because of that, you have an organization now, and the techniques you use to secure an IT environment is different than the OT environment, as you just highlighted, Jason. But there's more, they're coalescing, these responsibilities are coalescing against, under a leader. It'll bring all sorts of different challenges, but opportunities as well.
That's right.
To eliminate silos in organizations to address these things holistically.
No,
We have we talk a lot about Microsoft. Microsoft I think every podcast, unfortunately for them, there's something bad. The president, Microsoft's president, was in the Senate, right? Just recently to testify on the cyber attacks this past June. So yeah, the government is keeping an eye on it. Obviously, they're everywhere, and when
They
you're
are.
everywhere,
Their
you,
surface
you
is large.
correct. The surface is large. I'm not going to say it's a crappy product or anything like that. I'm just saying that, my goodness, we're up to
Widely used. I mean, you gotta.
Highly used.
yeah. And now we're at the printer spooler level. I mean, yeah, that's pretty granular.
You are.
Imagine.
But I mean, but you're also looking at all those other devices that we're going to be talking about as well. They're running Linux. They're running some Nix flavor on there. So, to your point, Microsoft right now, because of the reach that they have and where they're deployed, but also, we're going to see it more from the Linux side as that keeps going. It's the second targeted, not as much, but it's not as widely deployed, right? In certain areas. But we're going to start seeing more of that come to play. And I just talk about it, I'm not against the smart devices. I just don't need my fridge to tell me when I need milk. All right. I really don't. I don't need anybody coming through my fridge.
Yeah, stealing your cookies.
That's right.
Yeah, I get you on that point. That's it's true that there's a lot of how can we say, like, abuse, a little bit of going a bit too far when the fridge and yeah, you're right.
I'm not
Okay.
against it. All those companies that make them for this, this is only my opinion, not the opinion of behind the shield. But I just
Thanks.
think about it with these types of attacks and just what they're going after. And then you see the movie The Beehive, or The Beekeeper, and how
Yes.
those were exploited. If anybody hasn't seen it,
Jason Statham.
Hey,
with
no
Jason Statham.
spoilers, no spoilers.
No spoilers, but
Okay.
but it's interesting on taking advantage of the vulnerabilities at the human level or at the device level, and I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys, for the input on the hot topics. Really interesting. Hey, we got a couple of minutes here. These past few weeks, I don't know for you folks out there listening to the podcast, how busy you are in these weeks. I know that we mentioned it at the top of the show. Jason has been everywhere. Patrick has been flying out as well. I was traveling a bit more locally, but we all did different events. There's a lot of events in different cities in the US and in Canada. So I thought it would be interesting just to give a little taste, a little summary about those events for our people out there, our listeners that didn't have a chance to attend. So let's we're going to talk about RSA, and another one we're going to talk IBM Think, and a little bit more locally here, ITsec. So let's start with Patrick and RSA. What did you see? Did you see a theme? Did you see anything stand out
I saw a
at the
lot of
show?
people.
A lot of people, a big
A
show.
lot of floor space at the Moscone Center being taken over, more than last year. We were there last year as well. It was, listen, what, 47,000 people, Jason, that was reported?
Wow.
That was reported, and I think to your point, it was even more with all the offsites, right? Between
Yes, that's
hotels
true. A lot of the partners we met
Restaurant.
didn't even have a kiosk there and a presence there, right?
That's right.
So that it was nuts. So the hotel suites were all taken over as well, and the lobbies and whatnot. So record year. Listen, there was not one stand, one kiosk, one vendor that had AI that didn't have AI in their title. It's great. It's literally everyone. And I mean, if you wanted to make a mark there, you should have gone out and just said, "We do not do AI." And you would have gotten attention because the other thing is, okay, well, AI, what does that mean for you as a Mr. Vendor? It means different things to different people. And there's different instantiations of AI. A lot of people mix it up with a large language model, with the just basic automation, on static data sets. There's different implementations of AI, and it's a huge field, and it's been a lot, as we know, been there from the 50s and 60s in different shapes and forms. But again, it's like a marketing, we had the zero trust years, We had the CNAP year last year, cloud native application protection, and so they're all trends, right? Obviously, people want to go and with the trends. But I think if you looked under the surface, you would find that a lot of those vendors were just what they were last year or the year before the AI craze. But it was very interesting. I mean, the theme, there is obviously AI has to be contended with, understood, used, leveraged. That's undeniable. It's just that there's a lot of noise out there. Like I said, Zero Trust used to be thought of as a product by vendors, but it is not. And customers today, when you bring that name, they're jumping in their seats, and they really very quickly want to know what you mean by Zero Trust, right? So you have to kind of tell them in advance. Same with AI, that's going to become like that. So, but a lot of learnings, a lot of new and exciting, innovative companies, whether it's in identity, whether it's API security now that we've been proponents of for the last while. I think it's a huge attack vector that needs to be managed, much like AI security as well. We met a couple of our friends from Hidden Layer as well, and they're doing great things. So very enriching. A lot of for us it was networking, and roaming the floors for the most part. And listen, it's a vibrant community, very exciting. But we know that not all of the organizations that we saw will be there next year, right? There's a lot. It's a crowded market, and we talked about M&As before. But it's certainly vibrant, and there's certainly a need for an exchange and sharing to improve everyone's posture.
Did you know you can slow down and isolate cybersecurity threats by leveraging microsegmentation? As the most certified integrator in Canada, ESI can help you define security controls for each unique segment of your network, minimizing access to cybercriminals. Contact us at info@esitechnologies.com or visit esitechnologies.com.
But I also thought it was really unique from our standpoint. We're in a very good position where we've been leading at Virtual Guardian ESI these discussions for a while on AI, on resilience, on recovery, everything that was out there. And us being able to understand agnostically which way to go with our expertise and to help customers navigate through all of that noise that was out there. Who is actually viable? Who's making the waves? Which startup is going to move forward? Which one's going to be acquired? Things like that. You really can't foretell that, but you can see that, to Patrick's point, half those companies won't be there next year. But from our standpoint, really having the expertise to drive those conversations, from an advisory and consulting standpoint for our customers, that's where the ESI and Virtual Guardian path is for what we can provide based on the information that we're gathering from a lot of these events like RSA, Think, ITsec, etc. So we're in a unique position to be able to drive it, which is really, really viable.
I'll add very quickly, we were fortunate to have a client with us throughout the conference. We will keep everyone unnamed, but we had instant feedback, right, on observations from the client's perspective. On certain vendors, partners, observing what was going down, what were the priorities for them versus what they saw. Really enriching conversations during that period of time.
We have a lot of partners at Virtual Guardian. What's the one? We'll just single out one that will definitely be there next year, and that's they're going 100 miles an hour. They're on the upswing, or they're just dominating. Can you name one?
I mean,
you want to name one? I mean, there's more than one.
There's more than one, but I mean, you look at the market and you look at who's forward looking between, and I'll break it down between the IBMs of the world, the CrowdStrikes of the world, etc. Seeing from the RSA standpoint, CrowdStrike was really dominating that space. They had a very good message from Kurtz at the Piper Sandler event, and what they're trying to accomplish and to pack into a single agent and staying under 100 megs. And then also what they're doing around AI, and no matter what's backing up that AI, right? But also what they're targeting, to Patrick's point earlier, and what you were talking about, Marco, which is platforms. they are building that biggest platform and packing everything in. So, it's not just one company, but you can see that trend, and CrowdStrike was doing really well there.
Excellent. Perfect. And so let's go to you, Jason.
We will, by the way, sorry, Marco,
Sure,
we
go
will
ahead.
be inviting up and coming partners that we identified there. And there's a few that are redefining identity and end-to-end security, including API security. There's a few of them that we will probably be seeing on BTS over the next year. Stay tuned.
Excellent. Good comment. Jason, tell me a little bit, how was the IBM Think show out of Boston? How was that?
Yeah. It was good. It was really good. It was really well attended. I think they said somewhere around the approximate 5,000 mark of attendees from all over the world, which is pretty big, packing it into Boston. So IBM did a really good, put on a really good event, hosted well, and the content was really good. But you can see what we've been talking about over weeks and months about AI, the change in direction. You look at IBM being one of the oldest organizations that we have that's been leading in the tech space, et cetera, and how they continue to evaluate the market, how to pivot, and pivoting an organization the size of IBM is like trying to pivot the Titanic on a dime, right? It's really hard, but you can see where they've been in the past. We already talked about with Palo acquiring the SaaS portion of the threat domain with QRadar, Randori, and the other parts of the portfolio there. And why? Because they were not seeing that trend moving in that direction where they could be the top mark. So where have they been focusing for the longest time? I mean, they've been driving the AI story for a while. They've been driving through AI with Watson and even before Watson. But you saw AI, you saw the move, Marco, to your point, around not going all in, everything's in cloud, but that hybrid cloud model. You heard about automation, tons of automation, how we can automate, how we can remove the risk associated with certain decisions and be faster, more efficient. You also dovetailed right into the data protection space and the identity space. So you look at it from AI, hybrid cloud, and automation dovetailing into their go-to-market around data protection and identity. And that was the conference, but they had folks that were of similar minds coming in. Saudi Arabia was there. They're going to be hosting the Global AI Summit, I think this year is what they talked about. Having other organizations come in on how they've been adopting AI, large language models. And I'm not just talking about AI and the big picture of AI. We're getting granular here on deep learning, ML, AI, and how you actually build the models. But it was very interesting. We at Virtual Guardian ESI have been talking about this for a while, how you use your own data to train your models specific to your organization, then adding the external information into those models to enrich. And that was the theme. Data's exploding. Our customers are creating more and more data every day. And how can that data be utilized inside that AI model, tied into automation, and then working their way back to a data-driven environment? And they did really well on it. I said, really well attended. They really reinforced day in and day out their direction and their strategy. And from a partner standpoint, I'm an ex-IBMer, I'm an IBM alum, so I'm a little favorable to Big Blue, but they did really well.
You know what? I'll add to what you're saying is that as people pivot internally in terms of the data sources for AI modeling, they're gonna have to be very mindful about AI security, protecting against inference, model poisoning, and whatnot. So people have to realize that when you're consuming AI from the outside, there's certain mechanisms that protect data sources. It's more of the responsibility of the hyperscalers and the chat GPTs of this world. But when they're going to be internally focusing and leveraging their internal data,
that's right,
with Copilot and other solutions, they're going to have to be mindful of AI security. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Perfect. So last but not least, we got a couple of minutes. I took the road myself and headed out a little bit outside between Montreal and Quebec City. and there was a show called ITSec. So the show is a much smaller show, and it's in its third year. So it's quite a young show, but I was quite pleasantly surprised with the quality. The quality around all around. So the show was well organized, well attended. They actually capped the number of visitors, and they sell out really quickly every year. So for the 3 first years of the show, they always add a little bit more, and they always sell out. So I'm sure we're going to see ITSec growing in the next few years. There was about, let me see here, let's say maybe 30 or so exhibitors that were there. So this year, for this show, we wanted to test the waters. It's the first time that we were attending Virtual Guardian. So we shared a booth with CrowdStrike. So you mentioned, Patrick, I'm glad that you mentioned that they were quite present there at RSA. CrowdStrike, sitting with them for these 2 days was quite eye-opening in the sense that, and Jason was talking about that agent, and it's funny that you should mention that, Jason, because they spoke to us about that agent and say, you want to add something to the platform, it's got to fit in the agent.
That's right.
It's got to fit in there. And they told me, I was there with Abbas Mulai and Patrick Mubarak of CrowdStrike, 2 great guys. And Patrick was telling me, you want to join in, you want to put a module, it's line number 1. Does it fit in the underneath 100 meg agent, single agent? So I thought that was quite interesting because they've been adding a whole bunch of cool features. During the show, it just so happened it coincided they announced the SIM product now that they have. I still don't know what the name of it is. I think probably Falcon SIM, but that's added to the agent now. So the platform is quite robust. Development is going really quickly, and it was very interesting to spend some time with them. Also at the show, we had kind of a mix. There's a lot of competitors there, and when I say competitors, not necessarily competitors to our corporate office ESI, but more of our SOC offering. So for you out there that don't know, Virtual Guardian does operate a 24/7 continuous SOC out of our headquarters in Montreal. And there was a lot of that. There was a lot of competition there. And that tells us that, we're
going in the right direction.
It's the right direction. The market is very healthy, and a lot of the customers that came to see us and talk to us spoke to a lot of government agencies, school, educational instances, and they are looking for help. They can't hire more. They have a little bit of trouble finding the right resources. So by having the SOC there behind them, it's not just a question of being proactive. It is being proactive in the face of cyber attacks, but it's also the team.
That's right.
The team that's there supporting their team, their local team. So great show, nice success. So I think we'll see about attending next year. But okay, so we were all busy. Thanks for the little insight. I liked learning about the what was going on in the other trade shows. So we're running out of show.
Marco, just before you close, please. What did Jen said when we started? She was afraid we'd run out of have a lot of time on our hands, or was it you?
No,
we wouldn't be able to
not us.
Not with us.
Not with us. We like to chit chat. So that's all the time we have for today's show. We're going to wrap this up. I want to thank Patrick and Jason for all their insights, their usual insights on the panel. If you've missed any part of today's event, the show is going to be made available sometime next week, as usual. We're just going to clean it up a little bit for you and put it on the podcast services out there. You can find us pretty much anywhere on all quality podcast services out there. A big thank you to all our listeners. Without you, we wouldn't be doing this. Again, we're on our 21st episode. We're We're happy with the progression, and we already have a lineup for the next few months. There's going to be a break for summer, but we do have shows lined up, and it's going to be really interesting with some special guests coming on board. So a big thank you for your participation in the pod show. And remember, as always, remember that when you're behind the shield, you're ahead of the game. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.